The Sullivan County auction house smelled like old wood and ambition. I arrived 30 minutes early, watching luxury SUVs and Mercedes sedans fill the gravel parking lot. Men in sport coats and women in business casual streamed toward the entrance, clutching glossy property brochures my Uncle Warren had printed without my permission. The brochure cover showed my grandfather's lakefront cabin at Golden Hour, 2 acres of pristine shoreline, the hand-built dock extending into crystal water, the boathouse my father and Warren had constructed together 40 years ago. Estate liquidation sale. The header screamed in red letters. Motivated seller. I wasn't motivated. I wasn't even the seller. But Warren had spent 3 months convincing everyone I was both. Alex needs to face reality. I'd overheard him tell my Aunt Linda at Dad's funeral in February. Keeping that cabin on a social worker's salary. The property taxes alone are 18 grand a year. Insurance, maintenance, utilities. He's looking at 30,000 annually. He makes what, 45? He'll lose it to the county in 2 years anyway. Better to sell now while the market's strong. He'd said it loudly enough for half the funeral reception to hear. My cousins had nodded sympathetically. My mother's sister had squeezed my shoulder with pity in her eyes. Even my younger brother Marcus had pulled me aside. Maybe Uncle Warren's right, man. You can't afford that place. What none of them knew, what I'd carefully avoided mentioning during the grief and chaos of Dad's death, was that I'd spent the last 8 years as a forensic accountant for the state attorney general's office before transitioning to nonprofit work. My social worker salary was supplemented by consultation fees, expert witness payments and investments I'd made during my 6-figure years. I lived modestly by choice, not necessity. I'd also spent those 8 years learning exactly how people tried to steal property through fraudulent estate claims. Now I sat in the back row of folding chairs, my leather portfolio containing documents Warren didn't know existed, and watched my uncle play auctioneer's assistant. Warren stood near the podium, shaking hands with bidders, playing the role of concerned family member saving his incompetent nephew from financial ruin. At 62, he still had the car salesman energy that had made him successful. Firm handshake, easy smile, expensive watch flashing as he gestured toward the property photos displayed on easels. My nephew meant well inheriting this place, Warren told a silver-haired couple examining the brochure, but he's in over his head, works with at-risk youth now, noble, but not exactly lucrative. I'm just trying to help family before this becomes a foreclosure situation. The couple nodded knowingly. I recognized them from the Lake District Association, the Hendersons who'd tried to buy our shoreline access rights for years. They'd bid on every property within a mile of ours. Mrs. Henderson touched Warren's arm sympathetically. It's so hard when family members can't face reality. Our son-in-law went through something similar, refused to sell his mother's house even though he was drowning in debt. Exactly, Warren said, warming to his narrative. Alex is a good kid, heart in the right place, but he's 34 years old, never owned property before, doesn't understand what's involved. The well pump alone cost me $4,000 to replace last year, out of my own pocket, because Alex couldn't afford it. That was a lie. I'd paid for the well pump replacement myself, writing Warren a check that had cleared his account. But correcting him now would reveal my presence. A younger man in a tailored suit approached, Marcus Tang, the developer. Mr. Mitchell, I've reviewed the survey documents. The water rights include commercial use provisions. Absolutely, Warren said. My father secured those when he bought the land in 1978. The property can support a small marina or rental operation. I've had 3 developers express interest in that aspect alone. Another lie. The water rights were residential only, explicitly restricted against commercial development in the original deed. But Tang was nodding, making notes on his tablet. I watched Warren work the room, spreading misinformation with the practiced ease of someone who'd been bending truth for profit his entire career. He told one bidder the septic system was brand new. It was 12 years old. He told another the property taxes would likely decrease with new ownership. Impossible. They'd been rising 3% annually for a decade. He described the boathouse as recently renovated, when the last major work had been done in 2003. Each lie was calculated, designed to inflate the property's value and attract higher bids. Each lie would increase Warren's finder's fee. The investment group representative, David Song, was questioning Warren about the estate timeline. So probate hasn't completed yet. Oh, it's just a formality at this point, Warren said smoothly. The will's been filed, the court's rubber stamping it. I'm handling the estate as the senior family member. My brother would have wanted this property to go to someone who'd appreciate it, not to gather dust while my nephew figures out he can't afford it. And your nephew consented to the sale. Warren's smile never faltered. Alex understands it's for the best. He's here today actually. Wanted to see the property go to a good home. Song looked skeptical but didn't press further. I counted 47 people in the audience. Developers, wealthy retirees, investment groups, a few local families hoping for a miracle bargain. All of them had paid $500 non-refundable registration fees to bid. All of them believed they were buying legitimate estate liquidation property. All of them were wrong. The auctioneer, a professionally jovial man named Dennis Kowalski, stepped to the podium at exactly 2 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's Sullivan County Estate Auction. We have one property on offer. Lot 47, 4,287 Lakeshore Drive, comprising 2.1 acres of prime lakefront, a 3,200 square foot main residence, built in 1982, detached boathouse, private dock, and all associated water rights. Warren stood beside the property photos, beaming like he'd built the place himself, instead of just helping with one summer's worth of boathouse construction. Before we begin, Kowalski continued, I want to thank Warren Mitchell for facilitating this sale as the estate representative. Warren, anything you'd like to add? Warren stepped forward. Just that this property meant everything to my brother David before he passed. Our father built this cabin with his own hands, but David would want it to go to someone who can truly care for it, not someone struggling to make ends meet. He looked directly at me in the back row. My nephew Alex is here today. I hope he understands this is best for everyone. Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several bidders glanced back at me with pity. I met Warren's eyes and smiled slightly, his brow furrowed. He'd expected anger, or tears, or absence, not calm. Kowalski cleared his throat. Right, well, let's begin bidding. The opening bid is set at $400,000. Do I hear 400? 3 paddles shot up immediately. 400,000, now 425. Do I hear 425? The Hendersons raised their paddle. 425, now 450. For the next 12 minutes, I watched the price climb. The bidding was aggressive. Waterfront property this close to the city rarely came available. Warren stood beside the property photos, his expression growing more pleased with each escalation. At $500,000, a woman in the front row dropped out, shaking her head. At $550,000, 2 more bidders lowered their paddles. Warren leaned over to Kowalski, during a brief pause, whispering something that made the auctioneer nod. I caught fragments. Told you it would go high. Premium location. The bidding continued. $575,000, $600,000, $600,000, $625,000. By the time it hit $650,000, only 4 bidders remained. The Hendersons, a developer named Marcus Tang, who'd converted 3 properties on the North Shore, an investment group represented by David Song, with his Bluetooth earpiece, and a retired couple I didn't recognize. The man wearing a Navy veteran cap, the woman with kind eyes that reminded me of my grandmother. Warren was practically glowing. At $650,000, he'd have earned a substantial finder's fee from whatever arrangement he'd made with Kowalski's auction house. He'd also positioned himself as the family hero who'd saved me from financial ruin. I could already hear the story he'd tell at Thanksgiving. Poor Alex didn't understand property values. I had to step in before he lost everything. $675,000, Tang called out. $700, the investment group countered. The Hendersons exchanged glances, then raised their paddle. $725,000. Tang shook his head, lowering his paddle. The investment group hesitated, then lowered theirs. $725,000 going once. Kowalski announced, this is prime lakefront. Folks won't see another property like this for years. The retired couple, the man wore a Navy veteran cap, the woman had kind eyes, raised their paddle. $750,000. The Hendersons countered immediately. $780,000. The veteran couple whispered to each other. The woman nodded. $800,000. The Hendersons started to raise their paddle, then stopped. Mr. Henderson shook his head. They lowered it. Kowalski scanned the room. I have $800,000 from bidder 43. This is a phenomenal property, ladies and gentlemen. $800,000 going once. I opened my portfolio and pulled out the documents I'd been carrying since the funeral. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Reeves, my father's estate attorney. I'm outside. Ready when you are, I texted back. Now, Kowalski raised his gavel. 800,000 going twice. The auction house door opened. Margaret Reeves entered, carrying a briefcase and wearing a navy suit that made her look exactly like what she was, an attorney who'd spent 30 years ensuring dead people's wishes were respected. She walked straight down the center aisle. Warren's smile faltered. Margaret, what are you? Stop this auction immediately, Margaret said, her voice cutting through the room like a bailiff's announcement. Kowalski froze, gavel raised. Excuse me, Margaret reached the front, set her briefcase on the table beside the podium, and extracted a thick folder. I'm Margaret Reeves, estate attorney for the late David Mitchell. This auction is unauthorized and illegal. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Bidders exchanged glances. The Hendersons looked alarmed. Tang was already typing on his phone. Warren stepped forward, hands raised in placating gesture. Margaret, I don't know what you think you're doing, but the estate hasn't even gone through probate yet. Actually, it has. Margaret opened the folder, pulling out documents with the Sullivan County Court seal. Each page was flagged with colored tabs, organized with the precision of someone who'd spent 3 decades making sure dead people's wishes couldn't be ignored. Probate was completed 3 weeks ago. I filed the paperwork on April 1st, attended the hearing on April 10th, and received the court's approval of the will's terms on April 12th. She laid the documents on the table, spreading them so the court seals were visible to everyone in the front rows. That's impossible, Warren said, but his voice had lost its confidence. His face had gone pale. I would have been notified. You were notified, Margaret said calmly. She pulled out a green certified mail receipt. Certified mail was sent to your residence at 447 Maple Grove Road on April 3rd. The return receipt is in this file, signed by you on April 5th at 2:47 p.m. She held up the receipt. Warren's signature was clearly visible, along with the date stamp. Warren's hand moved to his collar, loosening his tie. I thought that was just informational. It was informational. It informed you that probate had been initiated, that you were not named as executor, and that you had zero legal authority over estate assets. Margaret's voice remained professionally calm, but there was steel underneath. It also informed you that any attempt to sell, encumber or transfer estate property would constitute fraud. She turned to address the entire room, her voice carrying to the back rows. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the confusion and wasted time, but this property is not for sale. It was never for sale. Mr. Warren Mitchell has no legal standing to auction this property, nor any ownership interest in it whatsoever. Kowalski set down his gavel. I'm going to need to see documentation. Of course. Margaret produced a bound document. This is the last will and testament of David Mitchell, filed and approved by Sullivan County Probate Court. Page 7, Section 3, Paragraph A. She read aloud, I hereby bequeath my entire interest in the property, located at 4287 Lakeshore Drive, including the main residence, boathouse, dock, and all associated structures and water rights, to my son Alexander David Mitchell, to be his sole and separate property, with explicit restriction preventing any claim or encumbrance by other family members. The silence in the room was absolute. Margaret continued, Page 8, Section 4. I name Alexander David Mitchell as executor of this estate, granting him full authority to manage, maintain or dispose of estate assets as he sees fit. Under no circumstances is my brother Warren Mitchell to be involved in estate administration. Warren made a strangled sound. Margaret wasn't finished. Page 9 includes a personal letter from the deceased, which I'll summarize. David Mitchell specifically foresaw that his brother might attempt to interfere with this inheritance. He structured the will to prevent exactly this situation. She looked at Warren. Your brother knew you, Warren. He knew you'd try this. I stood from the back row. Every head in the room turned toward me. The property deed was transferred to my name on April 12th, I said, walking down the aisle. 3 weeks ago, I've been the legal owner for 21 days. I reached the front and placed my portfolio beside Margaret's briefcase. I have the recorded deed, the probate court order, the property tax statements in my name, and updated insurance documents. Everything is legally mine. Warren stared at me. You knew. This whole time you knew. I knew Dad left me the cabin. Yes, I've known since the will reading. I pulled out a document from my portfolio. What I didn't know was that you'd forged documents claiming to be the estate executor and arrange an unauthorized auction. I handed the document to Kowalski. It was an affidavit with Warren's signature, claiming he had legal authority as executor to sell estate property. That's your signature, isn't it, Uncle Warren? Warren's jaw worked. I was trying to help. You forged legal documents, Margaret said flatly. You claimed authority you didn't possess. You accepted registration fees from these bidders under false pretenses. You arranged to sell property worth $800,000 that you have absolutely no right to sell. A man in the third row stood up, the one with the Bluetooth earpiece. I'm David Song, real estate attorney with Foster and Associates. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not sign documents claiming executor status for this estate? Warren looked cornered. I may have indicated certain authority. That's a yes or no question. Yes, but I genuinely believed. Belief doesn't establish legal authority, Song said coldly. I represent the investment group that bid $700,000. We've wasted significant time and resources based on fraudulent representation. We'll be pursuing legal action. The Hendersons stood simultaneously. Mrs. Henderson's pitying expression had been replaced with fury. We've been trying to purchase property in this area for 8 years. We spent 3 weeks arranging financing, paid an attorney to review the sale documents, and took time off work to attend this auction, all based on lies. Kowalski had gone pale. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not represent yourself to Sullivan County Auctions as having legal authority to sell this property? Warren opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, but I was acting in good faith. Good faith requires actual authority, Kowalski snapped. He turned to his assistant. Cancel the auction. Return all registration fees immediately. Back to Warren. Our contract stipulates that sellers misrepresenting their legal authority are liable for all auction costs, administrative fees, and potential damages. Our legal team will be in contact. Warren swayed slightly. Margaret pulled out another document. I should also mention that I've been in contact with the Sullivan County District Attorney's Office. Forging documents to sell property you don't own constitutes real estate fraud under state law. It's a felony. I didn't forge anything. Warren's voice cracked. I signed papers saying I had authority. You signed legal affidavits claiming executor status when you knew you weren't the executor. I said quietly. You accepted money, the registration fees under false pretenses. You attempted to sell $800,000 worth of property that doesn't belong to you. The auction house door opened again. A woman in a county clerk's uniform entered, accompanied by a uniformed deputy. Margaret had called reinforcements. The clerk approached Margaret. You requested verification of property records. Yes, can you confirm the current legal owner of 4287 Lakeshore Drive? The clerk consulted her tablet. Alexander David Mitchell. Deed recorded April 12. Transferred from the estate of David Mitchell via probate court order. No liens, no encumbrances, single owner, clear title. She looked at Warren. Sir, did you attempt to auction this property today? Warren said nothing. The deputy stepped forward. Mr. Warren Mitchell, we have some questions about fraudulent property sale allegations. We'd like you to come to the station. Am I being arrested? Warren's voice was barely a whisper. Not at this time, but the DA's office will be reviewing the case. Attempting to sell property through fraudulent representation is a serious offense. Warren looked at me, his expression a mixture of betrayal and desperation. Alex, you could have stopped this before it got this far. You could have told me about the will. I could have, I agreed, but then you would have tried something else. Claimed the will was invalid, or that Dad was incompetent when he wrote it, or that I manipulated him. You would have dragged this out for years. I gestured to the room full of witnesses. This way, there's no ambiguity. 50 people just watched you attempt to sell property you don't own. You can't claim misunderstanding. You can't claim I'm lying. You can't rewrite this. Margaret added, the district attorney is particularly interested in the fact that you accepted $23,500 in registration fees from these bidders. That's theft by deception, Mr. Mitchell. Combined with the document fraud, you're looking at substantial penalties. The veteran with the Navy cap stood up. Young man, he addressed me. I'm sorry you had to deal with this. We bid in good faith. The property is beautiful, and your grandfather clearly built something special. His wife nodded. If you ever do decide to sell, We hope you'll remember us, but we understand why you fought for this. They left, followed by a stream of other bidders, some angry, some sympathetic, all of them done with Warren's circus. Within 10 minutes, only a handful of people remained. Margaret, the county clerk and deputy, Kowalski and his assistant Warren, and me. Kowalski pulled Warren aside, his earlier jovial demeanor completely gone. Our contract stipulates severe penalties for fraudulent sale representation. Let me be very clear about what you're facing. He pulled out a tablet, scrolling through a document. Section 12, Paragraph C. Seller agrees to indemnify Sullivan County Auctions for all losses, damages and legal fees resulting from misrepresentation of ownership or authority. That's a $15,000 base penalty. Then we have administrative costs, marketing, staff time, facility rental, insurance for today's event, another $8,000. We'll also be refunding all registration fees. That's $23,500 you collected under false pretenses. Warren's face had gone gray. But I gave most of that money to your company as deposit, which we'll be returning to the bidders, and you'll be reimbursing us, Kowalski said flatly. We also spent $4,200 on advertising across 3 real estate platforms. You're liable for that as well. Total immediate damages, approximately $50,800. Our attorneys will send formal notification within 3 business days, and we expect payment within 30 days or we file suit. I don't have $50,000, Warren said, his voice barely audible. Then I suggest you liquidate assets or arrange financing, because we will pursue collections aggressively. We've been in business for 42 years with an impeccable reputation. What you did today threatened that reputation. Kowalski snapped his tablet cover closed. You'll also be blacklisted from every major auction house in the Tri-County region. Consider your selling privileges permanently revoked. He turned to me. Mr. Mitchell. Alexander Mitchell, I apologize profusely. We conduct thorough verification normally, but your uncle provided what appeared to be legitimate documentation, court letterhead, notarized signatures, forged documentation. I corrected. Yes, we've already implemented new verification protocols because of this. If you're ever interested in a legitimate sale, we'd be honored to represent you with a 20% discount on our commission as an apology. He left with his assistant. The county clerk handed me a folder. These are certified copies of the current property records, just in case you need them. And Mr. Mitchell, she smiled, your grandfather's property is a landmark. I'm glad it's staying in good hands. After she and the deputy left, taking Warren's statement for the DA's file, only Margaret, Warren and I remained in the auction house. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes and the abandoned property brochures scattered across empty chairs. Warren looked up at me from where he sat, slumped in the folding chair. His expensive watch caught the light, a Rolex he'd bought last year, bragging about it at Christmas dinner. Now it looked like costume jewelry on the wrist of a broken man. Why did you let it go this far? His voice was hoarse. Why humiliate me in front of all these people? You could have stopped this weeks ago. One phone call, one conversation, one conversation. I pulled a chair around and sat facing him, like the conversation at Dad's funeral, when you loudly announced I couldn't afford the cabin, or the conversation at the will reading when you accused Margaret of manipulating Dad, or the 3 voicemails you left telling me I was being selfish keeping property the family should share. Warren flinched. You had 50 conversations with me, Uncle Warren, 50 chances to respect Dad's wishes, to trust that I knew what I was doing, to treat me like an adult who could make his own decisions. I leaned forward. Instead, you forged documents and tried to steal $800,000 from me. I was trying to help you. No, my voice was harder than I intended, the words I'd been holding back for months finally breaking free. You were trying to help yourself, to the finder's fee, to the control, to the satisfaction of being right about me being too broke to handle this. I pulled out the last document from my portfolio, the letter Dad had included with the will. The paper was soft from repeated handling, the folds worn. I'd read it 100 times since the probate hearing, sometimes finding comfort, sometimes finding strength. He wrote you a letter too, you know. Margaret has it. Did you ever read it? Warren's face crumpled like paper. I know. I threw it away. I was angry about the will, angry that David left me nothing after everything He stopped. After everything you what? I prompted. After you helped build the boathouse that one summer. After you borrowed money from Dad 3 times, and never paid it back. after you tried to convince him to reverse mortgage his house to invest in your consulting business. Warren looked away. Margaret opened her briefcase and extracted an envelope, still sealed. This is a copy. Your brother wanted you to have it, regardless of whether you chose to read it. He knew you might not, but he wanted you to have the choice. She placed it on the chair beside Warren, and gathered her materials with deliberate care, giving Warren time to pick up the envelope. He didn't. Alex, I'll be in touch about the DA's decision within a week. The evidence is substantial, but since you're the victim, your cooperation will influence the outcome. She looked at Warren. Warren, I strongly suggest you hire a criminal defense attorney immediately. Real estate fraud carries a potential 3-year prison sentence. The forgery charges add another 2 years. Given your age and lack of criminal history, you'll likely avoid prison time if you cooperate fully and make restitution, but you need proper representation. She snapped her briefcase closed. I've represented David's interests for 30 years. This is the last service I'll perform for his estate. I wish it had ended differently. She left, her footsteps echoing in the empty auction house. I stood there, looking at my uncle, this man who'd taught me to fish, who'd helped build the boathouse, who'd called me sport and slipped me $20 bills at Christmas. This man who'd just tried to steal $800,000 from me, because he believed I was too poor and stupid to stop him. The letter explains everything, I said quietly. Dad knew you'd do this. He saw you try to control Mom's finances after she died. He watched you pressure Aunt Linda into selling her house and moving into your rental property. He knew you measured people's worth by their bank accounts. Warren picked up the envelope with shaking hands. That's why he left you nothing, I continued. Not because he didn't love you, because he knew you'd tried to take what wasn't yours. He made sure I had the legal protection to stop you. I walked toward the door, then paused. The property taxes are $18,000 a year. Insurance is $11,000. Maintenance and utilities run about $9,000. You were right about the costs. Warren looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. But I can afford it, I finished. I've always been able to afford it. I just never felt the need to prove that to you. 3 weeks later, the criminal charges were reduced to misdemeanor fraud, after Warren paid full restitution to the auction house and the bidders who'd retained attorneys. His penalty package was extensive. $52,000 in combined damages, fees, and restitution, 200 hours of community service to be completed within 1 year, 3 years of supervised probation with quarterly financial reporting, and mandatory attendance at a court-ordered ethics seminar for real estate professionals. No jail time, but a permanent criminal record that would follow him forever. The professional consequences were worse than the legal ones. Warren's real estate license was suspended for 2 years. His consulting business lost 3 major clients within a week. Word traveled fast in professional circles, and nobody wanted to be associated with someone who'd committed real estate fraud. His membership at the Lake District Business Association was revoked. His country club asked him to resign. His wife, my Aunt Patricia, filed for divorce within a week of the auction incident. She'd discovered Warren had taken out a second mortgage on their house without telling her, trying to fund an investment scheme with a former colleague. He'd been counting on the auction proceeds to pay it off before she found out. The fraud charges had triggered a financial review that exposed everything. Patricia called me the day she moved out. I should have seen it years ago. The way he talked about you, about your father, about anyone who didn't measure success by money. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. My brother Marcus called to apologize as well. I should have trusted you knew what you were doing. Warren made it sound so reasonable, like he was helping, like you were in denial about your finances. I should have asked you directly. It's okay, I told him. Warren's good at making people doubt themselves. That's how manipulators work. They sound so confident that you start questioning your own reality. You're still coming up to the cabin this summer, right? 4th of July week? Sarah wants to bring the kids, let them see the lake. Wouldn't miss it. Tell Sarah the dock's getting new decking, should be perfect by July. My cousin Jennifer, Warren's daughter, sent a long email apologizing for her father and asking if we could still maintain a relationship. I know what he did was inexcusable. I've been trying to get him to address his issues for years. The control, the obsession with money, the way he treats people. I'm so sorry you had to be the one who finally stopped him. I wrote back, you're not responsible for your father's choices. Come visit the cabin anytime. I stood on the dock, watching sunset paint the lake in gold and amber. The boathouse needed new shingles. I'd already gotten 3 quotes, settling on a local contractor who'd worked with my grandfather back in the 80s. The main cabin's deck required sanding and refinishing. That would be my project for late August, after the summer guests left. The dock pilings needed inspection, scheduled for next week with the County Marine Services Department. All tasks I could afford, both financially and emotionally. The cabin had good bones. Dad had maintained it well, and before him, Grandpa had built it to last. The foundation was solid fieldstone. The framing was old-growth timber that would outlive modern materials by decades. With proper care, this place would stand another 100 years. My phone rang. Margaret, the DA closed the case officially, she said. Warren's completed his restitution payments. All conditions of his plea agreement are being met. It's over. Thanks for everything, Margaret. I know Dad would have appreciated how you handled this. Your father would be proud of how you handled this. She paused. I know he seemed paranoid, writing that will the way he did, explicitly excluding Warren, naming you as sole beneficiary with those specific protection clauses. But he understood his brother. He'd watched Warren manipulate their mother's estate after she died, convince their sister to make bad financial decisions. Sometimes love means protecting people from each other. After we hung up, I pulled out Dad's letter, the one he'd written to me, not Warren. The paper was soft now, the ink fading slightly at the creases. Alex, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Warren has probably already tried something. He can't help himself. He sees the cabin and thinks about money, not memories. He thinks your quiet life means you're failing, not that you're choosing differently. I built this place with my father, your grandfather. You and I rebuilt it after the fire in '98. Remember that summer? You were 14, and we worked side by side, replacing the roof, installing new windows. Warren helped that one summer with the boathouse, but he never understood what this place means. It's not an asset to him. It's not even really a home. It's just another number on a balance sheet. To you though, I've watched you here. The way you maintain the dock every spring, the way you protect the loon nests, the way you sit on the porch reading like your grandmother used to. You understand this place. You earned this place, not through money, but through care. Don't let Warren bully you. Don't let anyone make you doubt that you deserve this, that you earned this. You're the only one who ever saw this place the way I did, as home, not investment. The will is ironclad. Margaret made sure of it. I gave her very specific instructions about what Warren might try. He'll threaten and manipulate, and maybe even cry. Let him. Then stand your ground. I love you, son. Take care of our lake. Take care of the memories. Take care of yourself. Dad, I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into my wallet, where I'd kept it since the funeral. A loon called across the lake, its haunting cry echoing off the opposite shore. Within seconds, another answered from the northern inlet, the mating pair that nested near the old swimming cove every year. They'd been here since I was a child. Dad used to take me out in the canoe at dawn to watch them fish. Soon the summer people would arrive, families with children, retirees seeking peace, young couples starting their journeys. I'd already booked 3 rentals for July and August, carefully screening tenants to ensure they'd respect the property. The income would cover the taxes and maintenance, with enough left over to start a replacement fund for the roof. But tonight, the lake was mine. Tomorrow I'd start the repairs. Next week I'd meet with the marine inspector. Next month I'd sand the deck. All of it on my timeline, my terms, my care. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code. Warren's region. Hello, Alex. It's Warren. His voice was hoarse, older somehow, like the past 3 weeks had aged him years. I read the letter, the one David wrote me, the one Patricia found when she was packing my things. I waited, watching the last light fade from the western sky. He said I'd lost sight of what mattered, that I'd spent so long chasing financial success, that I'd forgotten how to value anything that couldn't be sold. Warren's breath caught. He said I was teaching my kids to measure people by their bank accounts, and that terrified him. He didn't want you to become like me. The loon called again, lonely and clear. He wasn't wrong, Warren continued. He wasn't wrong about any of it. I've lost Patricia. I've lost my business reputation. I've lost the respect of my own children. Jennifer won't speak to me. My son moved to Portland last week. Didn't even tell me until he was already gone, and I keep thinking, I did this. I destroyed everything that actually mattered, chasing things that don't. Yes, I said quietly, you did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I wanted you to know I read it, all of it. He wrote 6 pages, Alex, 6 pages explaining why he structured the will the way he did, why he couldn't trust me with family assets, why he was protecting you from me. His voice broke. He called me his brother, and his greatest disappointment in the same sentence. I closed my eyes, remembering Dad's face the last time we'd talked about Warren, the sadness there, the resignation. Could I? Warren cleared his throat. Could I sometime? Not now, but maybe next year or the year after. Could I visit? Not to ask for anything, just to see it again. To remember the summer we built the boathouse, to remember when I still knew how to value something besides money. I looked at the boathouse, silhouetted against the darkening sky, remembered the summer Warren and Dad worked side by side, laughing over crooked framing, arguing about proper joint techniques, proud of what they'd built together. Warren had been different then, or maybe he'd always been this way, and I'd been too young to see it. Ask me next summer, I said. We'll see where things stand. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. I hung up before he could say anything else that might soften my anger, might make me forget what he'd tried to do. The loon called again, and this time 3 others answered, the original pair, and their half-grown juveniles from last year's nest, a family, staying together through another season. I'd check on them tomorrow, make sure boaters knew to give them space, put up the protection buoys like Dad always did, protect what needed protecting, just like Dad had protected this place from Warren, just like I'd protect it now, and teach my own children someday to protect it after me. The gavel had been raised at $800,000, ready to fall and shatter everything Dad had built, everything Grandpa had built before him. But the gavel never fell, and the cabin remained exactly where it belonged, in the hands of someone who understood that some things can't be measured in dollars, can't be reduced to assets and liabilities, can't be sold because they've already been paid for, in time, in love, in generations of memory. In quiet mornings watching loons fish and quiet evenings, watching sunsets paint the water gold. I walked back toward the cabin as the last light faded from the sky, already planning tomorrow's repairs, already protecting the next 100 years. Warren had been right about one thing. This property needed an owner who could afford it. He just hadn't understood what that meant. It didn't mean someone with the most money. It meant someone who could afford to care, to maintain, to protect. Someone who could afford patience and time and love. I could afford all of that. I always could.